Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online. News that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Welcome to this special edition of Newsmakers, the best of living here. I'm Fred Martino. Today we take a closer look at some of the natural wonders in southern New Mexico that make up this land of enchantment. We visit a variety of places offering fantastic views, historically significant sites, habitats full of plants and native animals, and a look at paths that were left by reptiles from before the age of dinosaurs.
I grew up in the Silver City area, born and raised there. I started here as a seasonal right out of high school. I was a seasonal for that one summer. The next summer I came back as a youth conservation supervisor. And then after I completed college, I started off at Rockhound State Park as a park tech, then transferred to City of Rocks as a ranger, and then later on moved up to manager. City of Rocks was established in May of 1952. The total acreage of the park is 2,932 acres. The formations are actually volcanic ash. It was an eruption that was believed to be 1,000 times greater than Mount St. Helens eruption that occurred in 1980. The actual eruption took place about 34.9 million years ago, they believe. And the actual caldera now, which is no longer a volcano, was approximately 40 miles northeast of the park.
It's quiet, scenic. When it gets dry, it's safer than the Gila National Forest. Lots of wildlife, owls at night. It's an amazing place. Not too many rattlesnakes, but a few. The rocks you can walk up in here and it's always different. You get a different perspective every time you walk through the place. The whole City of the Rocks is almost 3,000 acres, 5 square miles, so there's miles of trails to hike. There's scenic outlooks on the Table Mountain, so there's bike trails and hiking trails, something for everybody, picnic areas. Usually there's spaces for anyone that wants to come through. If you're from New Mexico and you're over 62, you can get an annual pass for $100. It's a good deal. It's probably the best kept secret of the New Mexico parks.
I work for New Mexico State Parks, so this is one of the ones that I haven't had the time to visit. There's so many to see. Oh my gosh, I wanted a nice place to hike. I've been staying in Silver City, so I've never had the time to spend in the park and actually hike and explore the rocks. And I thought it would be pretty interesting and an easy hike. I'm not into getting to the top of the mountain, I'm more into the view, the scenery. I like the camping sites. I've been going around picking which one I might want to come to if I come back. And I'm planning on a return trip at some point in the future. And I've always wanted to come and be able to camp so that I could do one of the night sky programs, because I understand that the skies out here are just phenomenal. and this is, you know, very different, so I wanted somewhere to be warm, and I grew up in the desert in Phoenix, so it's kind of like being back home. I've been having the best time just wandering in and around the rocks. I'll park in a spot and wander for a while and then move my car and I wander some more, and there's just so many neat little nooks and crannies to explore, and I like taking pictures and finding the different vantage points where there's openings in the rocks and the view through the holes, and yeah, it's really fun.
They can call the Parks Visitor Center at 575-536-2800, or they can log on at nmparks.com.
We're at the Boyd Sanatorium, which is in the Dripping Springs Natural Area in the Oregon Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument. Back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, Dr. Boyd came up here and created a tuberculosis sanatorium. He did take in tuberculosis patients, but from what we've been learning recently, it was as much a form of spa for people to come to. Behind me is Dr. Boyd's house. Off here below to my left was the kitchen and cafeteria for the people staying here. There was another building behind that that has since collapsed, and we have no idea what function that had. It's a fascinating construct here because what they did was they built 2 reservoirs in the canyon and then pumped water up to a cistern, and then everything from there was gravity fed.
This building was constructed by the Native American Bureau people, the workers, and it's constructed with rock from the mountain, so it's native rock here, which is probably partially why it's lasted for so long. As well, you can see that there's some wood parts. There used to be a pretty big pine forest here, and over the years they've taken the pine trees out both for the construction of the mountain camp and also for the use of the steam engines down at Modoc Mine. There were lots of visitors who came up just to enjoy the fresh mountain air, and there are also a lot of celebrations up here. We know from pictures and also from the scientists who have studied this area that there was a gazebo, there was a dance floor, some people say that there was a bowling alley and even a skating rink. So we're hoping to get more people from the local area to come visit soon. It's really common at the visitor center for people to come in and they say that they're from this area, whether it's El Paso, Juarez, or Las Cruces, and they say that they didn't even know that this place existed. And I think that this area is so valuable in terms of biological diversity, a way to get really good exercise in a really pretty area.
We're at the base of a multi-stage water holding system that Colonel Van Patten built to supply his house and his guest camp. This is the lowest of 2 dams that held water pumped uphill to both places and then gravity fed down from there. This dam no longer holds much water. Over the years it's silted in and it holds a little bit, but very little. There's an upper dam farther up canyon behind me that still holds quite a bit of water and often holds it year-round. And then above that is a small holding pond that really isn't dammed. Back then there was a lot more water than now, and we're talking, a little over 100 years ago, 150 years ago. it was much wetter than now. Well, the place is called Dripping Springs because now, and actually in the past, most of the time, the water basically trickled down through the canyon and wasn't a full flow except in the spring. So it dripped, thus Dripping Springs. And it's dripping down along the canyon and down these cliffs, which in the spring after the snow melt are waterfalls, and very beautiful and worth seeing.
Vengan todos a Dripping Springs, es un lugar excepcional para recrear. Puedes hacer caminatas, senderismo o simplemente sentarse y disfrutar la naturaleza que nosotros tenemos aquí en la comunidad de Las Cruces.
My name is Eileen Davis, and I'm a Bureau of Land Management here in Las Cruces volunteer. About 70 million years ago, scientists think that this volcano, these needles that we see right here behind us, were actually started with moving plates, and there's a hot source or a heat energy source underneath the surface of the Earth, which heats up the magma and brings it up. When things get hot, they expand and the rock comes up. So it goes from a solid to a liquid, and of course moves up towards the surface. So you got to imagine this underground. All of this is under the surface of the Earth. The tip of the iceberg, when it breaks the surface of the Earth, just like when you open up a soft drink and it goes psh, and it releases that pressure, that's actually what happens. And that rock is called the La Cueva rock. That's actually the first part that comes out, and it's nice and light and tough. And then you have the lava flows. That's where the La Cueva tuff come from. Well, this is the group site, and it's supposed to seat about 50 people. Call the office, the BLM office, and you can rent it. I believe the fee is $50. Of course, schools, it's for free. And we manage how many schools come out and try to make sure that they get the experience they need by not having large groups, larger than what we think is appropriate. Right now we have like a bunny explosion. There's cottontails everywhere. Sometimes when you go down to La Cueva and you go down the Arroyo path, you see deer, lizards, rattlesnakes, lots of birds. It's a beautiful place to go bird watching. Well, hiking is a really big thing. People hike out here a lot, and they come with their families and just spend the day and maybe take a walk to the cave, or maybe take a walk to the waterfall at Fillmore Canyon if there is water. The other thing that some people do with the recreation is there's a little bit of rock climbing because the rocks are just amazing, especially La Cueva. From what I understand, archaeologists have found plenty of artifacts in the cave to show us or to give us evidence that people actually lived in it for shelter for many, many thousands of years.
The story that most people like to hear is the one about the hermit, and his name was Augustini Justiniani, and he lived in here in 1869. He was actually living inside the cave then. He had been born to noble parents in Italy, and he had trained for the priesthood, but I like to say to the kids, like most of us, he decided to rebel against his family, and instead of staying with the priesthood, he left Italy and traveled the world as a curandera, or a natural healer. There are signs that he was in South America, Cuba, and Mexico, but everywhere he went, there were always people who were suspicious of him because he didn't dress like everybody else. He wore a long black gown. He wouldn't really live with the rest of the community. He would only live up in caves or out in the middle of nowhere. And he wore this girdle of spikes around his waist to punish himself for his sins. So they were suspicious of him. In Mexico and Cuba, he was actually exiled by the government because they didn't trust what he was doing. And his travels took him up to North America, where we have evidence that he was in New York in 1859 because they took a portrait of him there. And then eventually he made his way down to New Mexico, and he was living here in this cave and helping the people in Las Cruces with his medicinal herbs. But again, even here, people were suspicious of what he was doing. And on the night of April 17th, 1869, his friends from Las Cruces came up to visit him, and they found that he had been murdered outside the cave. He had been hit over the head and stabbed in the back twice. We still don't know who did it, so it's a big mystery. And the theories are that the Native Americans did it because they were trying to protect their area around that time. But I think it's also possible that the cowboys did it, or the church, or even the government from the community. La Cueva is our most accessible trail at Dripping Springs, which is why we take the 4th graders on it for their field trips. The easiest way to do it is to park down at La Cueva parking lot. It's about a 1 mile round trip hike, or about 2 kilometers. You go through this creosote mesquite shrub, up a small hill, and then back down, and it's a nice downhill, gradual hike back to the parking lot.
Oh, the views are beautiful, and I love dreaming about the rocks and how the rocks have changed. I think the geology is the most fascinating for me. It's really the most fun. The most fun is when I'm out here with kids. Their limitations are so few, and they learn so much, and they have so much to tell you, and their excitement is wonderful, and they will be our next generation conservationists. So I think it's hiking with kids I really enjoy the most. Come on out and enjoy it and help take care of it.
The trackways have been here for about 280 million years in the early Permian period of the late Paleozoic. What sort of creatures were making these tracks? If there's one thing I want people to take away from this, is that these were not dinosaurs, is that these were before the dinosaurs. This was a time when the first sort of reptiles were coming out. We have mammal-like reptiles such as Dimetrodon, and he's the famous track maker here. And then we have a whole number of different amphibian-like creatures that were also making tracks, as well as arachnids and various other types of insects. The trackways were known in isolated, very small little bits in the Robledo Mountains for a long time. But it was a man named Jerry McDonald who was a student at NMSU and decided that there was probably more out here and that he was going to find them. And he spent a lot of time out here in the 80s doing that until he found where we are right now, which is the discovery site. And it was here in 1987 that he found the first real big slab, which was probably the trackway of Dimetrodon. When these animals walked along this tidal flat in the mud and the silt, they would of course leave their footprints. Many different types of preservation ensues. So often an animal will step on the sediment and leave their actual print. When sediment then comes and covers it up, it'll fill in that space and you'll get a sort of a cast and mold effect. But also if the animal is large enough, they'll deform layers underneath the surface and we'll get what's called an undertrack, such as this one here of Dimetropus. And so many of the tracks that we see, that you would see here at the discovery site, are of this style. They're an actual 3D version of what the track would have been. How were the trackways preserved? It's almost a perfect storm of just the right amounts of sedimentation to preserve them, not too high energy that they would all be eroded away, but just enough water movement that would, lightly deposit mud and silt on top of them over hundreds of thousands of years that would bury them. in the intervening 280 million years that just happened to miss this block of limestone. And if you get really close, I mean, you can actually see that there's there's little bits of fossils everywhere in it, but that's the nature of limestone. Currently, there is one guided hike that I lead monthly to the discovery site. It's about 1.5 miles to the site, and then of course 1.5 miles back to the parking area. And it usually takes 3 or 4 hours, depending on how much I stop and talk. Usually the 3rd Saturday of the month, although occasionally it's the 4th Saturday. And in the summer it tends to start at 8, although in the fall, winter, and spring it tends to be at 9. The difficulty of the trails in the monument, I would rate them as moderate. There's no real easy trail, and they tend to go straight up and down some of these hills, and they're very rocky. So for a pedestrian on foot, it can be a little difficult to get around in here. Prehistoric Trackways National Monument is located just to the northwest of Las Cruces, New Mexico, in the Robledo Mountains, which are just north of Picacho. The monument was established for its paleontological resources. And if people just came in and took what they saw, then there wouldn't be any more fossils for the rest of us. Take only pictures, leave only footprints, which then I add, especially the trackways. Just leave the trackways where you find it.
The park, when it was established, from my understanding, that the Deming Ranchette, which was owned by the May family, that were established here in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they owned the place just west of where we're standing. One of the Mays was very interested in rock hounding, and when the park was donated, or how it worked out in 1966, it kind of became the name of Rockhound State Park. So rock hounding is for somebody that's interested in rocks. I mean, it's, you know, the different types of precious minerals and stones we find here. So we get people from all over the country that come and check this out and are anxious to come and find their geodes or their jasper or whatever they're interested. And it polishes up and makes a beautiful jewelry in displays. Rockhound itself has 2 hiking trails, the Jasper and Thunder Egg Trail, and I would consider those moderate hiking trails. The Jasper leads from our visitor center that's behind us here and intersects the Thunder Egg Trail, which is in the body of the park. And it planes along the Little Floridas for about 1 mile. And that's where a lot of people hunt the geodes, thunder eggs, and other stones or minerals that they can find, is off the washes and ravines off that Thunder Egg Trail. I think the thing that makes this park unique is you can take a souvenir rock with you. This is one of the only 2 places in the United States that you can take something from a park. The mission of all state parks is to protect the natural resources. You can come and take a souvenir. And the rules for rock collecting are designated and permissible in designated areas. And what I mean by designated areas, so the Thunder Egg Trail or the Jasper Trail are the areas that you can find the stones, you can take from there. A small tool like a rock hammer, no more than 12 inches. And it can't be for resale or for trade or commercial use. So that was kind of in our rules. That I want to make that clear. Rockhound has 29 sites. We have a day use area, which is 4 sites that people can come out and picnic and have a cookout, has a table, grill, and a shelter. And then the 29 sites are for camping. We have on 23 of those sites that has electric and water. We have a restroom with showers. We have a dump station, which is kind of important to a lot of our RVers. And the park actually stays very busy from October through April. The park is almost at capacity or near capacity during those months. The cost to come into the park, it's $5 entry fee, and that's per vehicle. So I suggest people, if you're gonna come out to the park and you have a picnic, try to carpool and stuff as many people as you can fit in the car. But overnight camping, if you don't need electricity, it's $10 a night. And if you require electricity, it's $14 a night to stay in the park. Well, of course, you can check out our website, nmparks.com. And each park is unique, so tooting our own horn, but I encourage people to come check out our website and our different events that we have throughout the year. And we do have that posted as well. But each park is unique, and we definitely promote and advertise our sister parks in the area, City of Rocks and Pancha Villa, which I've worked at both of those places. I think the beautiful landscapes, I take it for granted being raised in the area. I drive through the park sometimes, patrol in the evening, and I see people with their cameras and their binoculars looking at the beautiful sunsets, hence the name Land of Enchantment.
Thanks for joining us for the best of living here. This program is only possible because of our producers, Joe Widmer, Ralph Escandone, and Christian Valle. Subscribe to KRWG News on YouTube so you never miss a segment. And if you have an idea for the team, send us an email. The address is feedback@nmsu.edu.